Podcast City Network.
What is up, guys? Welcome to episode 136 of the Nest Podcast. It's your boy Brandon coming to you live tonight, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Zach. Zach, what's up, dude?
What up?
Not too much, man. We've had a wild weekend and a wild day in particular in the world of sports, and we're going to get into all that and then some in this episode. But I wanted to kick things off talking a little bit about NCAA March Madness, which is upon us finally. You know, last year that was the first major sporting event that was canceled due to COVID. So it's been roughly 2 years since we've seen the March Madness tournament, and I'm pretty excited about it. You know, there are some newer teams that have been added to the ranks, most notably because two familiar faces aren't going to be there. Of course, that's the Kentucky Wildcats and the Duke Blue Devils. You know, we were reading over some of the information going in, and Kentucky just outright sucked this year. They were 9-16 on the season, and Duke didn't do much better, only posted an 11-11 record. Of course, the Duke fans are going to say, oh, it was because of COVID that we were not going to get there. But let's face it, they were a 10 seed going up against the 2 seed Florida State team in the ACC tournament. Chances are they weren't going to make it into the tournament anyway. So Duke not going to be there. Kentucky not going to be there. What does that tell you about these one and done schools?
It might not be the method that schools are going to be using for much longer. I mean, I guess it's worked in the past, and it's an easy way to get a crap ton of stars on your team and go for a championship and then just rebuild every year. But I mean, for a school like Duke to not even make the tournament is a pretty big deal, I think. And it hasn't happened since what, like the 70s or something like that.
Yeah, but I believe they said this is the first time since 1976 that both of these schools are missing at the same time.
Yeah, it might make them rethink how they do stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we've been harping on this one and done not being the ticket for a while now, just because of things like this. You don't build that chemistry, you don't build that unit cohesion. But this is in living color what happens whenever it doesn't click. Most of the time, you've got those superstars that are going to go straight to the NBA and they can kind of carry you, but every now and then they fall flat, and this is proof right here.
Yeah.
But tonight on the show, we're going to be talking about the National League East. You know, we're running down our list of all of the divisions in Major League Baseball, and I tried to reach out to every single team in the National League East, and I didn't have anybody want to come on here and talk with us about it. So what we had to do is we reached out to our good old friend Brad, who is our baseball insider, bring him in to talk a little bit about the NL East and see what he thinks is going to go on in that. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Brad Shanler to the show. What's up, Brad? How you doing, man?
I am living the dream. How are you two?
Doing well, brother. Doing well. Before we get started, why don't you tell everybody real quick where they can find you and what shows you're doing this week?
Where can't you find me?
Exactly.
I am currently doing the Rip Griffin Show, which is a part of the Podcast City Network along with you guys. I also host a YouTube channel for the Bastards of Boston Baseball. I'm actually doing one in about 20 to 30 minutes. I do those on Monday and Tuesdays. And that's about it for my baseball content.
And then you also have the Brad Shanler Show, which is fantastic. I love hearing all of the metal bands and all the musical acts that you have coming through on there. That's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I actually just got done talking to a drummer from Australia. That was awesome. Pretty fun. That was pretty fun.
How many times did he say mate in the interview?
The first question I asked him actually was, "What's the future hold?"
Okay, yeah, because Australia's over in the future. I guess.
Right.
Did he laugh at it at least?
He did. He did. He
Okay,
got
cool.
it. He got
Good
it.
deal. We actually used to play bands and stuff like that on the end of our episodes, like as an outro or whatever. We would find random obscure bands and just play one of their tracks. And the very first band that we ever played was a band from Australia named Fumarole. And we got to be pretty good friends with them. And they actually were listeners for a pretty long time. We would always notice we had hits coming from Australia, and that's the only
Nice.
thing we could think of. But yeah, that's kind of cool. Australia is a good place for music. But we brought you on to talk about the NL East, Brad. We entitled this episode NL East is a pitch because, in my opinion, the NL East has some of the best pitching as far as the entire division is concerned, as any other division out there. Match them up, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, however you want to do it. I think the NL East is up there for sure.
The National League East actually, in my opinion, has the best pitcher in all of baseball right now, and that's Jacob deGrom.
Yep.
And to realize that somebody like Bauer, who now pitches for the LA Dodgers, is making a crap ton more money than Jacob deGrom, who deserves that, is absolutely disgusting to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, deGrom is fantastic. Thor, he's out right now recovering from his surgery, but he's up there as one of the best pitchers in the league. Scherzer has got to be in that conversation as well. So that you have some star-studded pitching here in the National League East. And I think that's what's really going to be interesting going forward in this division is with all the quality pitching, who's going to have the bats to be able to keep up?
In my opinion, I think that the Mets are going to end up dominating the East. And that's because, look, they got Francisco Lindor. They got the Polar Bear. That team is just up and down the lineup, like really good. But I think the sleeper is actually going to be Miami.
I actually agree with that, Brad. The Marlins, for what it's worth, they have a list of players on their team that it's either guys that are aging that you haven't really heard much from in recent years, guys like Adam Duvall, Jesus Aguilar, guys like that, Starling Marte, and then they've got just a bunch of other guys that are just coming up that might be huge players one day for probably the Yankees.
The other thing that I find interesting with the Marlins is you've got a veteran catcher such as Sandy Leon playing in their minor league system. So he's teaching. He's teaching while he's in the spring training, and he's going to end up teaching when they're doing the minor leagues season and all that as well. So I think that somebody of his caliber, obviously his bat's not going to teach them anything, but his defensive catching and like teaching these young catchers how to block the balls and whatnot. I think that that's going to help the Marlins in the future. And then I don't know. I just don't see the Phillies actually being a threat. The Nationals actually added a couple bats. You had Schwarber, you had Bell. They did add Lester, who, I believe he's 37 or 38. Even at his age, you're still going to get like a 4.3 ERA, something like that. And he's going to pitch. So I think the Mets are the team. I think the Phillies are probably going to be at the bottom of the barrel this season. Are the Pirates Central or East?
The Pirates are in the Central. The one team that you're skipping on is the Atlanta Braves, who I think could make a real run at this division as well.
Yeah, you're right. I did completely skip over the Braves. The Braves are always a threat. It's unfortunate that last year they blew a 3-1 lead.
Yeah, Zach's a little bit bitter about that because they knocked out the Cardinals in the division series and then blew that lead in the championship series. And we were talking earlier, and Zach was like, "Yeah, I think the Mets are going to run away with it. The Braves suck." And I was like, "Wait a minute. The Braves don't really suck."
Actually, the Braves probably have the Braves and the Mets. Now that you mentioned the Braves, I can't believe I forgot about them. But now that you mention that, yeah, because they suck. But those two teams have like probably the best starting rotation.
Yeah,
in the National League East.
Yeah, with Soraka coming back, Max Fried, whatever.
I think it's Fried.
Yeah.
Fried, yeah.
It's Fried.
It's spelled Fried, but it's pronounced Fried. And then they added Charlie Morton to that, who was lights out last season for the Rays. It's going to be a pretty big one.
Yeah, it was interesting to see Morton go to screw off, Rip. Same way how I can forget about that trash can beaten team.
We'll be talking about them next week.
Yeah, I know he's going to be on, and I'm going to razz the hell out of him too. But Morton was connected to the Red Sox, and I really thought that the Red Sox had a chance of getting him. But then it was brought to my attention that his family's in Florida, and that was one of the reasons why he went to Tampa Bay, is because he wanted to be close to his family. And then as soon as I found that out, I was just like, damn, we're not getting him. There's no way.
Yeah, no, and that would have been great to see him come up and play for the Red Sox, but it is what it is. He's in Atlanta, and that just, to your point earlier, adds to them having one of the best rotations in not only the National League East, but entire Major League Baseball as a whole. Plus, don't forget, they have some pretty good players with some pop at swinging the stick too. They re-signed Marcell Ozuna. They were able to have MVP Freddie Freeman coming back. They had Ronald Acuna, can't forget about him. Ozzie Albies, who can pop one every now and then as well. So they have some talent there. My question is, do you think Nick Markakis retiring is going to hurt the Braves this season? He was up there in age. He wasn't really that productive, but that veteran leadership does go a long way.
I don't know, because I don't really picture when somebody says Markakis' name, I don't think of the Braves. I think of the Orioles.
Well, that's because you're a Red Sox fan and you watched him play there.
It's just because that was the team he was on the longest,
You watched him play there forever. Yeah, I get it.
Fair enough. So, but I think of him on the Orioles. Last year, he ended up opting out. Then he opted back in once he realized, oh crap, they're good. So they're good. Let me go back. I don't really think that he was going to be the difference maker. I do think, however, that if the Braves didn't re-sign Ozuna, they would have lost a big bat.
Yeah, that was a huge get for them to be able to re-sign Ozuna.
Yeah, he was connected to quite a few suitors, and the Red Sox were actually one of them. Yep.
Now, you mentioned the Mets. I want to touch on them a little bit more. Did you see the 22 pitch at bat that Luis Guillerme had against Jordan Hicks of the St. Louis Cardinals the other day?
No, I did not. I did hear about it, and just hearing about it just makes me like Rob Manfred must be like, damn it, this moving faster stuff isn't working.
Zach and I actually watched it before we came on live, and I would love to share it with our viewers, but I don't want to get pulled off of the internet again, because every time we seem to share a video clip, it gets taken down. Thanks, Dana White. But we did watch it, and it's pretty incredible. And the Mets, the bench went absolutely insane for every single foul tip, for every single foul down the line. And then ultimately, whenever Guillerme drew that walk, they erupted. And that was Jordan Hicks's welcome back from his injury. And he had to face a guy that was just being pesky as hell and wouldn't give up, the strikeout, and ended up walking him. And that was the only player that he faced the entire game. So hopefully better luck to Jordan Hicks next time out, which Zach did point out he was hitting triple digits on the gun in his first trip out to the mountains, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, hitting triple digits in spring training isn't always um, a good thing, because who's to say that you're actually you're literally warmed up to your arms in that kind of condition to actually be throwing that. You could actually end up hurting yourself at that point.
Sure.
That's why, during the beginning of a season, you don't see guys throwing like 97, 98 miles per hour right away. They don't usually do that until like the end of maybe the first month, beginning of the second month. But like Chris Sale, sorry to keep going back to the Red Sox and whatnot. Obviously, they're my team, but you don't see him throwing his fastest as soon as he comes out the gate.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree with that 100%. Speaking of injuries and guys coming back, talking about the Mets, Noah Syndergaard, when he comes back, that could be the big difference maker for this entire division. Is he going to come back and be Thor, or is he going to have several outings where he's getting back to being himself?
Well, coming back from his injury, I believe he's coming back from Tommy John, correct?
That's correct.
Right. So usually when a pitcher's coming back from Tommy John surgery, you can't really expect them to be up to par right away. So when Noah Syndergaard comes back, I don't know when it is that he's coming back, but I would at least give him a month or two after he comes back before he's at his old self. Typically, with the way that TJ's done, Tommy John surgery's done, the guys come back and they're not that great.
Yeah, it's hit or miss, really. They're either going to come back and be lights out, or they come back and they're never the same again. Just moving right along. I know we don't have you for too long tonight because you've got to get to your other show, but I want to touch on the Nationals real quick. You mentioned John Lester earlier. Right. I know he's been absent from spring training because he had a thyroid issue. What are you hearing about him, and is he going to be able to return to form?
I believe that Lester is going to end up returning, to his self, to where he'll be the pitcher's pitcher. He's not going to be blowing gas. He's not going to be throwing like Max Scherzer. I mean, he might grunt every time he throws a pitch like Scherzer, but he's not going to be striking out people. He's going to be throwing to contact. Lester with the thyroid, I believe he actually returned not too long after his surgery. So I haven't seen anything on that. I hadn't looked anything up on that recently. But I had heard something in one of my groups that I'm in, that the Bastards of Boston Baseball, they talk a lot about Lester, obviously because of the
connection.
Yeah, the connection. So, I mean, he was supposed to get the thyroid surgery. Then he was I think it was 10 days later, he was supposed to come back.
Okay. Well, I wish him the best of luck for sure, because I know that dude has had an insane career when it comes to non-baseball related illnesses and injuries and things like that. Of course, he famously came back and battled cancer and resumed a career. And right. He's been fantastic pretty much his entire career. And I know a lot of fans in Boston were clamoring for him to come back whenever he was a free agent from the Cubs. Ultimately, he signed with the Washington Nationals instead, which I think is probably better for the Red Sox in the long run.
He signed with the Nationals for, what was it, $12 million?
Something like that, yeah.
I think it was pretty bad on the Chicago Cubs end. Okay, you guys didn't want to pick up his option. I understand that. And you guys were basically, shedding money. But picking up Lester for $12 million was basically like a steal for the Nationals. That's a veteran right there. Granted, a person like Max Scherzer doesn't need Lester's help, but I mean, maybe there's something that Lester sees in Scherzer that he can help Scherzer when he goes out and gets hit sometimes, something like that. It was a good pickup. The only pickup that they had that kind of confused me was Schwarber.
Yeah, no, I agree. That one was kind of weird because he hasn't really been the same in the past few seasons since about 16, 17. And I don't know, that he's an expensive weapon to have out there that's not really that productive.
Yeah, you have him out. I believe they're going to have him out in left field. I don't know.
Just put him out on an island. How long do you think that we're going to see prime Scherzer and Strasburg and the rest of that Nationals pitching that's been so formidable?
Well, I know that this year is actually Scherzer's contract year. So he's going to be a free agent after the end of this year. I believe Strasburg said that he wanted to remain with the Nationals for the rest of his career. I might have him mixed up with someone else, but I think Scherzer is going to end up being Scherzer. He's going to be that guy. You know, he's going to go out there every 5 days. Doesn't matter if he has a black eye or not. He's going to go out there and he's going to get punchies.
That was so incredible whenever he went out there with the black eye, the broken nose, and all that stuff.
That happened because he
bunted to his own face.
Yeah.
He bunted the ball into his own face. And it was incredible.
So final question, Brad. I know you've got to run, but who wins the National League East this year? Now that you remember that the Braves are in the East.
I'm still going with the Mets.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm going with the Mets is you've got the best pitcher. I believe pitching does help win. Offense will get you there as well. But you got Jacob deGrom. I don't know why a lot of people crap on Marcus Stroman. I love Stroman. I love how enthusiastic he is when he strikes somebody out. So I love the fact that he's still with the Mets. You've got Carrasco. He's an Indians pitcher, so you know he's good. And then you've got Syndergaard coming back, and I forgot who the other pitcher was that they had, but they basically have, them and the Braves are going to be fighting for first, in my opinion. And like I said before, I believe that the Marlins are going to be the sleeper team. Everybody thinks that, they're going to be the bottom of the barrel type team like they have been in recent years. And then last year, they just showed that they don't want to be that team anymore. Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens. I think that you definitely have a pretty good insight, and you think that we think that you probably have a pretty good call with the Mets and the Braves being the top two front runners there in the NL East.
I do actually have to say that one thing that I'm expecting out of the Mets before the season starts is that they sign Lindor to an extension. Because if they don't sign him to an extension, I think trading for him was a bad idea. Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I think it was just it wasn't good for them.
If they don't sign him before the season starts, they're probably going to lose him at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Brad, thanks so much for being on here. I know you've got to run. Go ahead and let everybody know real quick once again where they can find you.
You can find me at thebradshandlershow.com. You can find me on Twitter, BRSBaseball83. I am a co-host for the Rip Griffin Show, which we talk about baseball once a week. And I also host a YouTube page for the Bastards of Boston Baseball. We do that twice a week as of now. I actually was just notified before I came on here that we're actually changing that up in April. So pay attention. Go subscribe to our page. We have some funny stuff coming up the next month.
All right. Sounds good. Well, Brad, we appreciate you coming on. You're welcome back anytime. And I'm sure we'll talk to you pretty soon whenever the baseball season really gets kicked off.
Yeah, we got 2 weeks, guys.
Yes, sir. All right. Thanks a lot, brother.
Nah.
Well, Zach, who do you think is going to win the NL East this year?
I agree with Brad. It's going to be a fight between the Mets and the Braves. I do think the Mets have probably the best pitchers, minus Scherzer, but boy, those Braves have some bats, and that's gonna play heavy. It'll be very interesting to watch this season. And if listeners remember, we mentioned a few weeks ago that MLB has come out and said that they're deadening the ball. And what is that going to mean for pitching and for hitting? Are our pitchers going to have a better time? Are hitters going to suffer? Who knows? And if you've got a division with a lot of heavy hitters in the pitching department, it could mean a lot of low scoring games. So who really knows? We're going to have to just watch that and see if that ball is actually deadened or whatever. But it's going to be an interesting division. I agree. I think the Marlins aren't going to be bottom of the barrel. I don't have very many hopes for the Phillies. And the Nationals, I think, are probably going to be an interesting team, but I don't know if they have enough to compete because the Mets and the Braves are pretty formidable.
I think the Braves ultimately edge it. I do agree that it will be a race between those two, the Mets and the Braves, but I think the Braves will be able to edge them out in the end. I think they just have a little bit more firepower on the offensive side, and that's going to propel them to win a lot of games. I mean, we're talking about a Mets team that in the past has not really been able to produce those runs, and they've had, Cy Young winners that barely break 500 on the season because they never get any run support. Right. Yeah, they've added Lindor, but how much is Lindor really going to add compared to what they've already had, Yep. So we'll see, but I think the Braves ultimately get the big W in that division and move forward. We've had a wild day in the National Football League. Today was the official start of tampering and free agency. Free agency officially doesn't even begin until the 17th. So it's kind of been wild to see as many signings and things of that nature as we've been seeing today, but it's been wild. The quarterbacks started off making the biggest noise. Of course, we had Drew Brees announce his retirement and officially announce his retirement, and he's going to be joining up with NBC Sports as a broadcaster. Are you excited to see Drew continue his career as an analyst and as a broadcaster and take off the pads and leave it up to the younger guys?
Yeah, I think it was time. I think he picked a good year to go out. He wasn't competitive as he normally is, but he wasn't terrible. So I think it was smart of him to go out while he's not necessarily on top, but he's still, the game has not just completely beat him up and spit him out. It's a good time for him to leave. As far as his commentating on games, we'll just have to see. I don't think many people saw that Tony Romo was going to be a good commentator, but apparently he is, and he can predict things in 15 seconds in the future that we don't know. So I would assume that Drew has a good eye for things. Obviously, quarterbacks are pretty smart guys, so we'll see what he can do with that. I'm kind of surprised that he immediately went to the booth and didn't take a year or two off or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I guess money talks. Yeah. And if he's able to read the defenses and all that, maybe he can put to bed the Notre Ramos rumors that Tony Romo was able to read defenses better than anybody else. Because if Drew Brees can go up there and do the same exact thing, it's just like, oh, that's a quarterback thing. That's just what they do. Sure. But I am excited to see Drew in his new role. I think he'll do a good job because I think he's a smart guy. I think he's able to provide some pretty good insight to the game of football. I mean, he's played forever and he's done so much in the sport. I think it's just a natural fit for him. Of course, the Saints promptly turned around and gave Taysom Hill a 4-year, $140 million extension. But all of those years are voidable, which tells me something about the Saints and about how they view Taysom Hill. I don't think they actually made this deal to make him the face of the franchise and to make him, the next big guy. Because if all those years are voidable, then he's just a placeholder. And right. This whole deal was basically just meant to clear some cap space. Yeah. I actually see the Saints before the offseason is up, extending Jameis Winston as well, and then trying to see what they have in both of those guys going into next year.
Yeah, I can see that. And they have to clear up some cap space because Michael Thomas has a gigantic deal. Alvin Kamara has a really good deal. And now they're not going to be as good as they were. I think you're definitely going to see a regression as they try to figure out who they are without Drew Brees. And I wouldn't be surprised if they signed Jameis Winston to like a 1-2 year deal and let those two kind of fight it out to see if they have something in either of them. I definitely think that Winston has a chance to be good here. I think we've seen what Taysom Hill is all about. And to me, he's just not a quarterback. He's some sort of other position. He can run. He's agile. But at least from what I saw last year when he had to take over, he doesn't throw as accurately and as well as a NFL starting quarterback needs to. And I think he might be out of a job after the end of this season. Like you said, his years are voidable, so they can just cut him whenever they want to. So I think that whole experiment of having Taysom Hill be this wildcat kind of guy or whatever is going to soon come to an end.
Yeah, I agree. Shout out to the Godfather from NFL Trash Talk 2021 on here, Jim. What's up, buddy? How you doing? Speaking of Jim, we got to talk a little bit about some of the other guys that have made a splash this offseason. And Tom Brady made waves around the league recently because he signed a 4-year extension. So Drew Brees retires. Tom Brady signs a 4-year extension that will take him into his year 47 season. Does this guy think that the 65-year retirement applies to him?
It must be.
That's the only thing that I can figure is that he thinks that he has to play until he's 65 years of age in order to collect retirement benefits or something like that. I don't get it, but he's back. Rob Gronkowski announced that he's back in Tampa on a 1-year deal worth $10 million. I guess the Tampa Bay Gronkaneers want to get it all back together again, huh?
Yeah. I mean, and that win last year just absolutely lit a fire under them, and it just bolstered their egos, I'm sure, and they think that they can keep doing this for 5 more years, which Tom might be able to. I mean, Tom is insane. Gronk, though, I don't know. I mean, if someone's going to pay me if someone wants to pay me $10 million to play another year and I'm Gronk, I take it. But boy, I don't know. I think this might be the actual last year. And does he even make it through this year without an injury?
Sure. That's a good question. They also gave Chris Godwin the franchise tag to keep him from going anywhere in free agency, which I guess is a pretty big move for them in order to keep that wide receiver core together for at least 1 more year. Yep. And, with James White from the Patriots being a free agent and, chances are he might not be coming back to New England. He may find his way down there to Tampa Bay to link back up with Brady. Leonard Fournette is a free agent again, so he might not be back. Who knows what's going to happen there? We've got a lot more that we've got to figure out with the defending champs before the season really kicks off. And I'm sure we'll be up to date on all of that as it gets closer. But we do know one thing, though. Cam Newton is back in New England, which shocked me. And I know it shocked you because we had talked about it before that we didn't think that he was the man for the job in New England. But it looks like at least Bill Belichick for now thinks that he is the quarterback of the future. What do you think about that signing?
I think he's also a placeholder, kind of like Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. Mm-hmm. He's the right now answer. And then maybe in September, they might have drafted a quarterback by then, and maybe Cam will start the first 3 or 4 or 5 games or whatever to kind of give the new kid a chance to learn the playbook and stuff like that, and maybe hand the reins off to whoever they end up drafting. I do think that they will end up drafting a quarterback. Paying Cam $1 million or whatever it was to sign for another year is a pretty smart move. You've got a veteran who, for what it's worth, he might have sucked last year for one reason or the other. He is still an NFL level quarterback. I think he's still competitive. He still brings something to the table, at least with his legs. He can still run for you. And if anything, he can show the young kid some stuff that he knows and help him out in some certain way. And then at the end of this year, if you have a quarterback that you drafted that you see something in, then you part ways with Cam.
Yep. And, Cam did have an off season last year. It's been well documented that he had the least amount of throwing yards. He only had like 8 throwing touchdowns compared to 10 interceptions. Of course, he added a few more touchdowns with his feet and all that, which that's what Cam is going to be able to offer you. But it is fair to say that this team that they're going to put out on the field next season will be drastically different from the team that they had on the field last season. And that's because of some of these moves that they've made today. Today, Bill Belichick opened up the purse, signed checks left and right to bring in a plethora of new guys. I've been checking Twitter all day long, and I've been tweeting out like, dude, every time I refresh my Twitter page, the Patriots have signed somebody new. I wonder who they've signed since we've been live, because I'm sure they've added at least one other player. Just today alone, they added a defensive back, Jalen Mills, who played for the Eagles last year. They signed him to a 4-year, $24 million contract. They signed defensive tackle Devon Godchaux from the Dolphins for a 2-year, $16 million deal. Linebacker Matt Judon from the Ravens for a 4-year, $56 million contract. The big signing of the day that took everybody by surprise was a 4-year, $50 million deal to free agent tight end Jonnu Smith, who's basically the best tight end that's been in New England since Gronk. And just before we went live, there were the reports dropped that they had made deals with wide receivers Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne. Aguilar gets 2 years, $26 million, and Bourne gets 3 years, $22.5 million. All of this comes on the heels of last week trading for Trent Brown from the Raiders, bringing him back. Kyle Van Noy was released from the Dolphins. He couldn't find his way back to the Patriots. Oh, and by the way, they still have the 15th overall draft pick coming up in this upcoming draft. This rebuild is exciting to watch, man, because they've taken the team that was a shell of a football team and they've plugged a bunch of stuff back in there. They've utilized that cap space on the very first day trying to rebuild it. They're not waiting around to let these guys talk to other people and ultimately go somewhere else. Bill is saying, we're going to pay you. Come on, let's play.
Yeah, it's wild to see, especially that many signings in one day. And you just got to think that Bill's up to something. He knows his players. He knows who he wants and who he wants to go out and get. And clearly he's done that. You also got to think that they're going to have their opt-outs back from last year. So that's a lot of their defensive players that they were missing last year. I don't think this Patriots team is going to just lay down and die now that Tom has moved on. Bill Belichick still wants to win games, and I think they're still going to be competitive come next year. It may be hard to beat the Bills and win the division again, but they're going to be no slouch for sure.
No, yeah, you're right. The Bills are going to be tough, but the Pats aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And they're at least saying, hey, we're here to compete. You know, I know some people will probably be like, oh, well, Nelson Aguilar, he sucked when he was in Philly. Yeah, but he was pretty lights out whenever he got to Las Vegas and was playing with Derek Carr. So maybe it wasn't a Nelson Aguilar issue. Maybe it was a quarterback that was throwing him the ball issue.
Sure.
Jonnu Smith had a breakout season this past season in Tennessee. He was one of the best tight ends in the National Football League. He was also one of the best tight ends in fantasy football because he was getting a bunch of yards and he was a red zone target. He's smaller for a tight end, but he's faster than most of the other tight ends out there. And this deal actually puts him as the second highest paid tight end in the entire league behind Kittle. Nice. He gets paid more than Travis Kelce apparently. So that's pretty big deal if you're going to pay him that much money.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Speaking of Travis Kelce, we have to talk about some of the stuff that's been going on with the Chiefs. You know, they released both of the offensive tackles that, you know, didn't play in the Super Bowl. They were injured for the Super Bowl or whatever. They ended up releasing them here in this offseason. And then they let their starting center walk in free agency. So next season, you're going to have almost an entirely brand new offensive line. How does that bode for somebody like Patrick Mahomes that got destroyed in the Super Bowl behind guys that he wasn't used to playing behind?
Man, I'd be pretty nervous. I would hope that offense is going to try to spend money on some offensive linemen because that's absolutely necessary. That's almost 100% what the issue was in that Super Bowl. Mahomes was running for his life. Yes, he can run, but everyone knows that a good offensive line is where success starts on the offense. And I hope Mahomes is one of those guys that kind of gives his linemen gifts. You know, you've heard of quarterbacks buying them Rolexes and whatever else. I hope he's one of those guys because he's damn sure going to need their help if they want to come back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. He needs to give them a Rolex, take them out to dinner, buy their wives fancy diamond necklaces or something. Brandon Janice is commenting on here saying that he thinks that it was a bad move as well for the Chiefs to release those guys. Yeah, I mean, the way that you build a football team is you pay the guys that are your playmakers, and then you have to pay the guys that protect your playmakers. And if you're not protecting your playmakers, they end up getting hurt. That being said, unless they're able to plug those holes, I don't see Patrick Mahomes making it a full 16-game season.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be tough for sure.
He can't get beat up every game like he got beat up during that Super Bowl and walk away at the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
One notable thing that I must add is that Aaron Jones is staying there in Green Bay. He signed a 4-year, $48 million extension, and that might be the best bargain for the Green Bay Packers this entire offseason, because that dude, 1,000-yard rusher last season, really helped carry the load for the Packers down the stretch. And without him, I think that offense would be lost. We talk about it all the time that Aaron Rodgers doesn't really have that many weapons there in Green Bay. Aaron Jones is definitely one of those weapons that he does have.
Yeah, that was a huge signing for them. And if there's one thing that offense needs, it's weapons, and they need to let them work. You know what I mean? It's only going to get them so far if Devontae Adams just keeps getting targets. If they can have a solid running back like this, it's good news for them for sure.
Yep, I agree 100%. And I think the more you look at this deal, the better it is, because look at some of these other the running backs from around the league that have gotten paid huge amounts of money to do basically what he's been doing year in and year out. And he's just like, yeah, I'm cool with that. 48 mil over 40 years. I can live with that. That's 12 a year. I'm good with it.
Yeah.
But then you've got guys that are getting paid 18, 19 mil a year that aren't producing anymore.
Zeke.
Yeah. Which leads me right into my next point of topic. We talked about it last week about Dak. Was he going to get signed and all that stuff? And then it broke minutes after we were done recording last week that he, in fact, did get paid 4 years, $160 million, $40 million a season for Dak Prescott. Coming off of a broken ankle, yet to step on a football field, and he's already now getting paid $40 million a year. What do you think of that? What was your initial reaction when you saw and heard that news?
I wondered what the hell took Jerry Jones so long to pay him, if he was going to pay him, because I can't say that last year was the definitive year that solidified Dak as Jerry's quarterback, because he got hurt. So I don't know what Jerry was thinking here. I don't know why he waited till his hand was forced to do this. Maybe he was just buying his time. I don't know. But boy, this is a player-friendly deal, and not very friendly to the team, because they don't have any cap space to play with. I mean, how the hell are you going to get any offensive lineman to protect this guy? Just like we said with the Chiefs, Mahomes needs protection. Dak Prescott absolutely needs protection.
Yep.
And we've seen that he can't really rely on Zeke, because Zeke's just mediocre, and that might be because of their offensive line. This is just going to worsen that problem, because they're not going to have any money to pay anybody, and they're going to have to move things around to get cap space to pay this guy. Hats off to Dak for getting this huge deal, but don't expect to win a Super Bowl with the Cowboys.
No, I agree. And it's funny, he signs that 4-year deal, and Tom Brady also signs a 4-year deal, basically trying to say like, oh, yeah, well, I can still play for 4 more years. I'm going to try to run the NFC this entire time. It's going to be something to see. Like you said, I don't think that the Cowboys will have too much going forward, because they can't afford to pay anybody else. They're paying they're paying $87 million in 3 players. The cap space is $182 million. So that means for the other 50 players on their active roster, they've got less than $100 million to go around.
Yeah.
People are going to get jealous at some point. People are going to get upset with it, and if for some reason Dak does go down again, who are you going to have as backup?
Exactly.
Andy Dalton's a free agent right now. So are you going to bring him back just on a whim? I'm sure he's a pretty costly bench player.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think Dak will recover from this ankle injury just fine. He may have a little bit of setback a little bit. I'm not too worried about that, but I am worried about the rest of the team. Like you said, who are you going to find to play? And they all have to share $100 million. It's just it's not a good look. At the same time, though, if they wouldn't have signed Dak, like you said, who the hell are they going to get to play a quarterback? So I think Jerry's hand was forced here, and he just waited till the last second to pay Dak when he could have done it maybe for cheaper 2 years ago.
I was going to say he did it to himself by insisting on trying to sign Zeke first and then sign Cooper next. And they did it to themselves by trying to hold out, trying to wait to see. Like, Dak bet on himself and won. The Cowboys wanted him to fail and lose so that they could pay him a lot less.
Absolutely.
That's all there is to it. What else do you want to talk about tonight, bud?
We can go over a little bit of the UFC fight night that was on Saturday. Not a really big eventful thing, but one thing that was interesting was, again, an eye poke happened. Muhammad got poked in the eye by Leon Edwards, and it was a real bad one this time. They had to stop the fight. And I don't know his condition or anything, but I'm sure it's not great. And it just brings me to the point that Joe Rogan has made before, and I'm sure other people have made before, that something has to be done about these eye pokes in the UFC. I mean, anytime you watch a UFC card, you're bound to see an eye poke. And Rogan has said that he thinks it's because of the gloves, that it just kind of the way you hold your hands in the gloves, it kind of extends your fingers instead of allowing you to tuck them in easier. I don't know what it is exactly, but I don't see how the UFC has gone this long without making some sort of change or done some sort of research and development into why the hell this is happening. Because if one of your superstars loses their eyeball or loses their vision in an eye because of this, you're going to be screwed. Yes, I get it. It's a fighting sport. They're going to get injured or whatever. But let's leave that to the actual techniques that these fighters are using instead of these accidents. Because I think 10 times out of 10, these eye pokes are accidents, and people are just reaching their hands out to try to block an attack, and they end up poking each other in the eye. And it's just ridiculous that the top level MMA organization hasn't been able to figure this out.
Yeah, no, you're right. I have seen some pretty egregious eye pokes. Some of them are just clearly accidental. One that definitely comes to mind was when Megan Anderson toe poked Kat Zingano, and there's absolutely nothing you could do about that one. It was just a freak accident. But I do think the gloves have something to do with it. Now, obviously, they can clench their fists because we've seen some big time knockouts with closed fists. But for whatever reason, they do tend to hold their hands a little bit loose. And when they're just poking out there and testing the distance, that's usually whenever the eye poke happens. They're trying to feel for the distance, and the other fighter happens to move into it, and it just goes right in. But it is what it is. They do need to try to address it. They do need to try to figure out what's going on and how they can rectify that. But I honestly don't know how.
I don't either. And that's the thing. I'm not trying to say that I'm smarter than the UFC or anyone else, but you would have to think that by this point, they'd have to just do something. Like, I don't know what you could do, but just see what other organizations are doing. See if ONE FC and see if Bellator and all those other organizations have as many eye pokes as you do. See what their gloves are like. See anything that you can see, because this is ridiculous. I mean, fans don't want to see eye pokes, and they especially don't want to see fights end because of eye pokes. We want a good, entertaining match, and I don't know. It sucks, and I think it puts people at a disadvantage too when they do get eye poked and the fight goes on. Good luck fighting with one eye that just got poked. I mean, it's bad enough to be in there trying to fight with top level contenders, and now you've got your eye poked. So good luck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely hate seeing a fight end because of a doctor stoppage. I would much rather see it end at the hands of the fighters, or at the very least, let the judges decide on it. But having the doctor stop it is the absolute worst for an MMA fight. I just don't know what to do short of sending them out there bare knuckle to see if maybe it is the gloves, but then you're going to have the naysayers and all that stuff come at you and being like, oh, you're sending out bare knuckle fighting. This is barbaric, blah, blah, blah. Nah, we're just trying to eliminate accidental pokes to the eye.
Right. Yeah. It's a difficult question to answer, but
yeah,
I think the UFC definitely needs to start asking questions about how they can fix it.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see if anything comes of it, with people like Rogan involved with it and stuff like that. Hopefully something will happen because he's pretty well known and pretty respected among the MMA fighters and in the sport. Janice commenting on here saying 2 weeks in a row with a doctor stop. Yeah, it gets annoying for sure. Whenever, especially when there are these high profile fights, it's terrible when a main event gets stopped for something like that, or they, the Aljamain Sterling winning the belt on an illegal knee, which, I mean, I get it that it was an illegal knee, but it sucks to see,
It's bad for business. Yeah.
It's very bad for business, but what can you do?
Did you see the other thing in the fighting world that came out today? Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua have agreed to a 2-fight deal that would unify their heavyweight belts, and I guess basically whoever wins gets the unified belt or whatever.
What if they split?
Good question. I don't know. I don't know why they did a 2-fight deal, but
if they split, then they would have to do the third
and maybe
trilogy fight.
Maybe that's what they're thinking. They get paid for 2 fights. If they split, then they get to do a third fight for
like a super fight.
Yeah, an ungodly amount of money. But that'll be interesting. There hasn't been a lot of anything going on in the boxing world, so I think this is the fight to make for the heavyweight division. Tyson Fury is going to be a hell of an opponent for Joshua, but it'll be interesting to see. I have no idea when they're going to fight or whatever, but that'll be a cool one to watch.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to see if we can get our good old buddy Justin to come on here and talk about that fight with us, because he's our boxing insider for sure. Yeah. I know he's still running that gym there in Tennessee now that that Roy King Jr. has officially passed away, and everything has fallen on Justin now to keep that gym alive.
Right.
He's been busy with that, and he's been doing the best that he can. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, Justin was a co-host on the Nest podcast up until about a year ago or so.
Yeah.
And his one of his closest friends, Roy King Jr., professional boxer, was in a fight right before COVID happened, and he lost the fight and slipped into a coma in the corner, and rushed to the hospital there in Nashville, Tennessee, and he spent the better part of a year in a coma before he finally passed away, just about 2 months ago. And it's been a sad story to hear. We've unfortunately had to be this close to it because we had a partner that was that close to it, and he told us a lot of the details before even the public knew about it, and it was heart-wrenching to follow and heart-wrenching to hear about. But I do wish Justin the best of luck doing his keeping that gym afloat, because I know that's been a huge challenge for him, and to all of Roy King's friends and family, our condolences for sure.
Yeah, it always sucks to hear something like that, and for that whole gym, and I'm sure that little boxing community that hurts. And I'm not sure if you heard this, but the boxing community also lost another guy, Marvin Hagler. He was a middleweight contender for years, champion for years and years. And he died relatively young at 66. And man, it sucks to see boxers go through that. And who knows what the ultimate, issue was, but you got to think that getting punched in the head is not good for the health. And I appreciate everything that fighters do, and I respect the hell out of them, but man, that is not good for the health. But who am I to stop anybody from doing that? And and it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to do that or not. But it just sucks. I hate to see the guys that dedicate their lives to something like that die young or whatever it might be. So yeah, it sucks, and we feel for Justin and that whole community.
Yeah, with Roy in particular, it's like this guy spent his entire life literally fighting to put food on the table for his family, and fighting is what cost him his life and is leaving his family riddled with debt. And that's what really sucks. Whenever you take away the sport of it and just look at the human element and the human aspect of everything, it's like, wow, this family is ravished because of this. Yep. And that's what really breaks my heart. But anyway, before we go down a sad conclusion, anything else you want to talk about? Oh, NCAA football.
Yeah.
July 2023. Really?
Yeah.
That's a pain.
The only thing I can think is that they're actually going to spend the time to develop a good game instead of just clone Madden and slap the college logos on it.
I hope you're right.
That's the only thing I can hope for, because if it is just a Madden clone and some crappy game and we have to wait 2 years to play it, I'm going to be pissed off.
Yeah, I hope you're right, and I hope that they're putting it out there now so that they can get it set up with, like Notre Dame saying they're not going to be in it. And I'm sure other top schools are saying like, oh, we don't want to be in it. We don't want to be involved because we don't want to pay these athletes to do it. Hopefully pushing it that far out in the future, it allows them to resolve some of the legal issues that they were facing and be able to figure out how to pay these guys and get them in there so that all of these schools can be represented, and it would be a great game once again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been so long since we had a game that I think they can do it, and I hope that they do. I hope they make a good one, because that was always my favorite football franchise. Madden was just whatever. I always thought that NCAA football was where like the actual better gameplay and everything was. So hopefully they can continue that. Who knows? This might just be a cash grab or whatever, but we can only hope for the best. And then, of course, we've got to look forward to the Show 21 coming out, and they're going to have a stadium builder in this game. So that'll be interesting to check out.
Yeah, that will be fun. We'll have to build Nest Stadium and invite our listeners to come and challenge us at our home field.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe it'll let us upload our own graphics and stuff, and we can put it on the big screens. I don't know. That'd be cool.
For sure.
Oh, man. My elbow's hurting.
Uh-oh. Need time?
Yeah. It's funny. My elbow has actually been hurting for a little while now. I think it's in part in how I sleep, and from where I'm constantly, leaning on that arm to control my mouse at work and stuff like that. But I was telling my wife about it, and she was like, well, do you want to go get seen by the doctor for it? I was like, no, not really, because if the MLB scouts start hearing that I'm already having elbow issues, they're not going to want to sign me to a big contract. Yeah. And she's like, she looked at me dead in the face and she's like, you're almost 36 years old. You're way past your prime anyway. I was like, oh, way to cut me deep.
Yeah, man, I could get a minor league deal. You don't know.
You don't know. Don't judge me.
What if COVID hits a team really bad and they need players? We've seen it happen. The Marlins put out a thing that said any players with professional level experience, we need them.
I was ready. I was just waiting on the call. They never called.
Who are they going to pick? A 36-year-old who's going to get Tommy John, or a 36-year-old who is not getting Tommy John?
That's it. They're going to go for the guy that's not ever had the Tommy John and doesn't have any documented elbow injuries.
You got to play the game, man.
That's it. I'm playing the long con. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We're obviously out of stuff to talk about tonight. We appreciate everybody coming on. Brad, thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your knowledge of the National League East with us, even if you forget the Atlanta Braves play in the East from time to time. It is what it is. We'll pick you up. Thanks for everybody listening and that's been commenting along. We appreciate all of you. Go and check out the Nest store at shop.spreadshirt.nest and pick up one of our newest t-shirts. I'm wearing it right now. The baseball inspired. It's got the little spring training logo on there, and it's got Nest with a baseball on there. And That cute little slugger right there is my son playing t-ball. So go out there and support the show, get you a cool shirt, and keep rocking it. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.